Today on Truck Tech, we'll transform a high-mileage Dodge Cummins work truck with a low-buck $500 paint job. We'll show you what you need, how to prep your truck, mix it all up, and how to spray it right. Then we finish it off with a few parts that'll make any work truck look great, and all for less than you think. It's all today here on Truck Tech.
Hey guys, welcome to Truck Tech. Well, today we've got a 94 Dodge 3500 work truck in the shop. You guys might remember a few years ago, we had this thing on the show where we fixed a sagging headliner, sprayed in a bed liner, and did a few other small things to kind of extend the life of the truck. Now overall, it's in decent shape and the drivetrain is strong, but it's in desperate need of a paint job. But like I mentioned, this thing is a work truck and we don't want to spend a ton of money making it all one color again. For you guys that have watched the show for a few years, you know that I don't do a ton of paint and body work. So we've got a guest that's going to join us and bail me out and get this thing painted for us. He'll be here in a second. For now, let's take a look at this truck and a few things that need to be fixed. Now, all over the truck, there's spots like these where the paint is delaminated and it's exposed some of the metal underneath, leading to some surface rust. Now, on the steel bedside, we've got some flaking paint, and the fiberglass fender, well, the paint is looking a little chalky and dull. At the back of this long bed pickup truck, we've lost one of the rubber impact strips, and the fiberglass is stained from black diesel exhaust. Overall, the truck's not too beat up, but it does have a few dents and dings and pop nuts that need to be fixed. Now on camera, these headlights look like they're in decent shape, but in person, they're a little bit more pitiful. The driver's side is foggy and hazy, and the passenger side has a pretty strong yellow tint to it. So we're gonna freshen up the lighting as well. For now, let's get started prepping this thing. All right, now to get this thing ready for paint, the first thing I did was take this thing down to the local car wash, hose it down with some heavy-duty degreaser, and then hit it with the high-pressure rinse to get rid of all that stuff. We've also removed a few parts and emblems and taped off weather stripping and moldings that we don't want to damage during sanding. I've also welded up a few holes in the roof from a previous sun visor installation. And like I mentioned, we're going to have some help in the shop today to paint this thing, so let's go meet them. This is Ted SWAN, paint instructor and consultant with Summit Racing, and this certainly isn't Ted's first paint job. Ted's career includes hundreds of high-end paint jobs from custom bikes to hot rods and muscle cars. But today's assignment, a budget weekend paint job for about $500 in primer, sealer, paint, and clear coat. But today we're going to make it a lot easier on him because we're just having him paint a work truck. And he bought everything with him needed to do a job like this.
Everything we bought here is to do a complete paint job, and you would need this to do one on your own. We brought Rage metal glaze body filler so that we can fill in nicks, dents, or scratches. We have the actual glaze itself by SEM to go on top of that to fill in any minor scratches. Now the next step in the finish is going to be Summit 2K Urethane Primer Surfacer. This is going to level any bodyworked areas up to the original paint finish. It's also going to prevent any soaking in of the base coat and clear coat into the areas that were repaired. Now, after the primer surfacer is thoroughly sanded, we're going to seal the truck in white. This is also a urethane-based product. We're doing that so that we have color consistency before applying the base coat. An often skipped step during a paint job is people skipping the sealer step. Now, although this truck is white and we're using white paint, the surfacer that we used is going to be a different color. So by applying sealer over the whole job, that's going to have an even coloration to paint on top of. This is going to save some paint and also make your job much, much easier while you're spraying.
Cool, sounds good. Now in addition to that, we've also got a gallon of Summit Pure White along with some reducer, some urethane clear coat and activator, along with a few supplies. And like you guys know, with a paint job, cleanliness is key. So we've also picked up some wax and grease remover and some surface wash. And with the truck moved into the prep station, we're getting ready for a few stages of sanding.
We used 80 grit to feather edge all the areas that had peeling paint. In other words, to have the quickest cut. And then we refined it with 180 grit. You never want to skip more than 100 grit in steps. Our finish sanding on there was actually done in 320. And of course, the red Scotch-Brite pad we finished up with. And the red Scotch-Brite pad, depending on which company you talk to, generally they'll say it's somewhere between like 360 and 400 grit. 400 grit is fine to spray base coat clear coat over if you're going to apply sealer over the entire area.
And with the truck all sanded down, Ted's blowing off the dust in preparation for the next step, which is the application of some body filler.
After the break, it's body filler and primer.
Next is going to be tape it up, primer surfacer it in the booth, sand the primer surfacer down on all these bodywork spots.
And later, we're laying down the paint. Stay tuned.
Hey guys, welcome back to Truck Tech, where we're in the middle of our budget work truck paint job, getting ready for some body filler.
Now, when mixing body filler, it's very important to mix it up on a non-absorbent surface. They make a variety of mixing boards that you can buy at a body shop supply place, but I just like to use a piece of sheet metal like aluminum or stainless steel. An advantage of this is when you spread the body filler on here, it gives you a couple more minutes of working time because it absorbs the heat that the body filler's making. It just gives you more time to put the filler on. Before I use this, I'm going to sand it so that I don't have any sharp edges to get hurt on. Be sure that you knead the hardener thoroughly. Roll it between your hands because this stuff does separate a little bit in the hardener tube while it's been sitting on the shelf or in shipment. I was actually putting about a golf ball sized piece of filler on the mixing board itself, and then I would apply a ribbon of hardener. Mix it together like you'd see your grandmother mix bread by kneading it, not stirring it and whipping air into it. You're pushing all the air out. And then I applied a very tight coat with a body filler spreader.
Also remember, when applying body filler, not to be too heavy-handed with it. The more you put on just means more you have to sand off.
Then we actually finished the metal in 80 grit and feather edged it out with 80 grit, and then in a wider area went with 180 grit.
With the body work done and sanded down, Ted wipes the truck down with some of the cleaning supplies we picked up from Summit.
Okay.
What's next?
Next is going to be tape it up, primer surfacer it in the booth, sand the primer surfacer down on all these bodywork spots. We're going to put it back in the booth after that. We will seal it with one coat of white sealer, and then we will apply white base coat.
Now, taping off a vehicle is pretty straightforward, but the more time you spend carefully taping means the less likelihood that you're going to find unwanted overspray somewhere else on the truck. And the next step is primer surfacer. After thoroughly shaking the primer surfacer, you can mix it in the cup at a 4-to-1 ratio. 4 parts primer, 1 part activator.
Primer surfacer is something that you would apply over a body filled area. If you were to paint directly on top of body filler, some of the paint would actually get absorbed into the body filler, and you would have a, say, perfectly shiny fender, but where the bodywork was, it would be as dull as most people's garage floors, because a lot of this stuff got sucked into the body filler resin because it is porous. We put primer surfacer on there for 2 reasons. It gets slightly absorbed into the body filler, but it also builds that body-filled area up to the level of the remaining finish. And when you use a sanding block on that, it gives an invisible repair.
And with the gray primer surfacer dry, we're ready for another round of sanding.
The primer surfacer, I initially hit with 320 grit sandpaper and then refined it to 400 grit because we were going to seal it.
Why is it important to sand?
It's important to sand so that the paint that you're going to apply actually has a sand scratch to flow into. If this was the sand scratch profile, the paint's going to flow into it, and as it dries, it's actually going to grip into those sand scratches. So it'll not only be glued together because they're made as a system, but it'll have mechanical adhesion.
Up next, two-stage paint, made easy. Stick around.
Hey guys, welcome back. Well, we've recruited a couple of guys to help us wrestle this not-so-small truck into the paint booth, which can be a little challenging and chaotic.
Here's a quick tip that you guys can do at home. Some things look awful when they have overspray on them, so I'm going to tape off this very large exhaust pipe with a piece of tin foil. Works great for anything that's hard to mask.
Before applying the white sealer to the truck, it needs to be mixed with hardener at a 5-to-1 ratio. Then it can be poured through a paint strainer and applied.
Most of our tech sheets for our base coat, clear coat products have recommendations of what color sealer to use underneath. It causes you to use far less paint, less laps around the car, if you will. I hit the entire vehicle, even areas that we didn't touch but were sanded, like the inside of the wheel laps on all the fender wells. And because that was a dual wheel pickup that had the fender flares on there, we even did the bottom. It was literally running parallel to the ground where the pinch welds were. We sealed everything because the sealer, being a urethane product, has amazing adhesion to any sanded surface.
And with the truck completely sealed in white, Ted can move on to spraying the base coat. And he's got a recommendation for beginners on spray gun overlap.
Approximately a 60% overlap for beginning painters. As guys get more experience with the spray gun, they'll find that they move faster and that they will be able to actually have a tighter overlap, more like 70 or 75%. Allow it to go touch dry, and of course, because the car's taped up, you want to touch an area where the tape is, but depending upon the draft in the area you're spraying, it may take longer than recommended. It might take 10 or 15 minutes, say, if you're spraying in a single car garage. If it's dry, if you can rub your finger across it lightly, not really pressing on it, but rub your finger across, it's ready to apply the next coat.
Now, for our work truck, we went with a two-stage paint system, which is a separate base coat and clear coat. But Summit also has a variety of colors in their single-stage systems as well.
You could actually apply single-stage paint over top of that gray. I still highly recommend the sealing so that you have the least amount of paint on the vehicle. In other words, you're not fighting to cover the primer spots versus the other color that's on the vehicle.
And with the base coat applied, he can start mixing the urethane clear coat. It's 4 parts clear coat, 1 part activator, and 1 part reducer. Now, these components are all from Summit and designed to work together.
Now, the Summit High Solids Clear is a recommendation of approximately 10 minutes between coats, and then apply a second coat.
Now, this truck certainly isn't a show vehicle, and we took the approach of keeping things as simple as possible, and we tried not to get too carried away with paint job perfection.
We just taped everything up and did what I would call a presentation job for a contractor's vehicle. What we did not do, and the difference would be this between this and a perfect job, was we didn't spend hours and hours of body work making sure everything was perfectly straight. We just really sanded the thing down and did something that most people could do in their garage over a 2 or 3 day weekend with a couple of friends. And now we have a truck that we could park in front of anybody's house, and people would say, in general, that's a really nice looking older truck, especially from 50 feet like what a contractor's truck would be.
Project Work Truck Refresh is looking nice with its new paint. When we come back, Ryan will put the finishing touches on this Dodge Dually update with new lighting and a shiny new grille.
Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. Well, we've got our Dually out of the paint booth and back here in the shop, where it looks much better than it did when we started this process. But before we put it all back together and drive it home, let's address some of these front end parts. Now, like we showed you earlier, the old headlights were starting to fog up, haze up, and turn yellow. Not to mention, old headlights against new paint just doesn't look that good. So we picked up a couple of replacements from LMC Truck. We also went to LMC and picked up a new grille. The old one didn't look that bad, but all the mounting tabs on the backside were broken off. The only thing holding it in its place was the hardware at the top, and it would rattle like crazy when the engine was idling. We also picked up a couple of new battery hold downs, since the only thing holding the batteries in place now is gravity. Now, we were able to get these headlights into position without even removing the bumper. But we did remove the top piece of plastic bumper trim to give us enough wiggle room. After reinstalling the bulbs, the next step is to attach the seal. The last step is to aim them. Then we can reattach the bumper trim, reinstall our clearance lights, and finally add that shiny new grille. Now, we didn't have to replace this grille, but it goes well with the new paint and the new headlights. All right, with a few bucks spent on replacement parts and materials and a little bit of time and effort, this truck looks presentable again. But it's more than that, it actually looks good. And hopefully we've got this thing set up for another 20 years of hard work. Now, if you've got a mid-'80s Chevy pickup and the front bumper on your truck is full of dents and dings or maybe some rust, well, it doesn't make a whole lot of financial sense to try to fix that worn-out bumper when you can get an affordable replacement like this one from Brothers Truck Parts. This is a triple nickel and chrome-plated smooth front bumper that fits 1983 to 87 Chevy 1500s. And if your bumper brackets are bent up or tweaked, they've got replacements for those as well, along with quality stainless steel fasteners to finish off the job. Now, if you've got a 2007 or newer Jeep Wrangler JK and you want to lower underhood temperatures, well, Daystar's got a few products you might want to check out. They offer standalone hood vents that go in the front center of the hood or side vents to help evacuate some of that heat. They also offer a more comprehensive hood cowl kit that takes hot engine air, takes it in through this vent, and lets it exit through these side vents on either side of the cowl. Now, depending on what kit you choose, it can lower underhood temperatures by up to 14%, and they all retain the factory underhood insulation and keep the structural integrity of the hood. Guys, thanks for watching Truck Tech. See you next time.